Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Benji-Sales live chat. It's so good to be back. It's so good to see everybody. How are you doing today? I have some good news. I remembered to close the other tab so you don't have to worry about the audio being scuffed, guys. We're good to go. Let me know in chat that everything sounds good, but I'm pretty sure I'm good to go today. I did not forget to close it. So we've obviously got some very juicy, big topics to talk about today. What is that main thing that we're going to be discussing? It is obviously going to be yesterday's PlayStation Showcase. After an extremely long wait, almost 2 years. I think the total time between them was like 18 months. Yeah, Sony came out and they did a showcase yesterday, and let's just say the reception is very, very, very mixed, okay? Definitely did not go over, I think, the way that many expected. I was actually planning on doing a post-show yesterday, and I'll just be upfront. I'll give you my opinion right now off the top. I was so underwhelmed by the show that I was like, you know what? I don't really feel the need to do a post-show right now. So we'll just do a live chat tomorrow. So who knows? I'm sure maybe I could have gotten a bunch of viewers if I went live immediately afterwards, but I was very underwhelmed, and so I didn't particularly feel a lot of excitement to just dive straight in and talk about the showcase. I thought we were going to get way more than what we got yesterday. Now, that doesn't mean that the show was like outright terrible. There was some very good things there that I did like about it. There was definitely some games that I thought looked awesome, but this to me just felt like a long state of play. It did not feel like a showcase to me. It just felt like a state of play that instead of being a 30-minute state of play became a 90-minute state of play. So, yeah, we can talk about it here. We can talk about your guys' opinions. We can talk about the good, the bad. We can talk about, does this actually have any impact on the PlayStation brand, it being met so mixed? Is it just not going to mean anything? Where are PlayStation Studios? Because they were almost a no-show at their own event. Yeah, we can talk about a lot. I think there's actually quite a bit to dive into and talk about in regards to this showcase. Now, for anyone, if this is your first time ever as part of my stream, way it works, it's a show that's 100% driven by you, your comments, your questions. You just drop them into chat, and we talk about the latest news in the video game industry. There's going to be a few ways to do that. First of all, of course, there is the free method. You type a question, whatever you want, it pops into chat, and I get to as many free questions as I possibly can. There's going to be two other ways to guarantee that I get to your question, and those are going to be, first of all, super chat option, type a donation of whatever you want. It alerts me, and I get to super chats as soon as they drop. The other way to guarantee that I get to your question is going to be by being a channel member. Channel memberships are $4.99 a month. You just click the join button down in the corner and it allows you to join. And basically the perk for you is that I guarantee that every channel member gets at least one question or comment, whatever you want, per chat. I can't promise that I can hit every single member question because these chats get pretty big, but if you are a channel member, you're locked in, guaranteed. I'm definitely going to at least get to one from you every single chat. And yeah, I don't need to do a whole bunch of preamble off the top because really I think this conversation is going to be dominated by one topic. Of course, you guys can ask me about anything you want, or you can make statements about anything you want. This is an interactive chat. It's not just all about me. But yeah, it can be anything you want. It doesn't even have to be about the showcase, but I feel like the showcase is definitely going to dominate today's conversation considering how big it is. And right off the bat, straight off the bat, we're going to go straight into a poll, okay? Let's start things with a poll right off the bat because I'm very interested to see what you guys think. And that's going to simply be, how would you grade the showcase? How would you grade the PlayStation Showcase? We're going to do the A, B, C, D thing, you know what I mean? So A, B, C, D, or lower. It only gives me 4 options. I'm sure you guys all know how that scoring works. I know around the world people have different things, but I think at this point everyone knows what an A, B, C, D, or lower grade means. Obviously, A is the best, D or lower would be the worst, and I'm dropping that into the poll right now. If you guys want to know my personal opinion, I'd give it a C, because there were some things there that I thought looked pretty good. So I'm not all the way down to D or F. For me, it's a C, but I can't give it higher than that if I'm going to be perfectly honest with you. Even with there being some cool stuff there, I personally can't by any means give the show an A or B. So for me, it's a C. C is the score that I would give this show. It wasn't one of those shows where it's like everything looked bad. In fact, I thought a ton of games looked great. It was more about what was missing than the content itself being bad. You know what I mean? It wasn't one of those scenarios where I'm watching this show and I was like, oof, that game looks terrible, and oof, that game looks bad, and oof, that looks like trash. Like, it wasn't that at all. It was just like, there is a lot of very odd omissions here. Like, there's a lot of games that you think should be here that completely disappeared. So that was like the main thing. It was more like an omission of content than the content itself looking bad. We've got some people typing their scores into chat. I'll read them out really quick, and I'll start getting into your super chats. We got Downward Incline, gave it a C minus. Just Mercy, a C. John Doe, an F. AP3, a C. Jazil1234, a B. Dylan B, a C or C plus. Super Hidden Account, a C. Yeah, we're a lot of C's. I think that's pretty accurate, but again, I mean, it's all opinion based. You guys can score it however you want, but I feel like a lot of us are going to come down on that C rating. That kind of what it feels like. But we'll see. The poll's running, so vote on it right now, and we'll see how it all shakes out. So let's start diving in to these super chats, because we got a couple, and then I'll dive into your member questions. Ren Delano here with a $1.99 super chat. Thank you so much, Ren. Really appreciate that. Phantom Blade 0 and Dragon's Dogma 2 left me excited. Yeah, both of those look super cool. I sent out a tweet right before the showcase, and I was asking people, what do you want to see? And Dragon's Dogma 2 was one of the games on my list. And that was one of the ones I thought wasn't a likely one. Like, I was asking people, like, what's your hopes and dreams, realistic or whatever, and I put a couple in there that I thought were very realistic, but Dragon's Dogma 2 to me felt like a long shot. I was hoping it was going to happen, but it did show up, looked super cool. It looked like a sequel to Dragon's Dogma. It didn't look radically different to me. Obviously the visuals and stuff are super improved, but you looked at it and you're like, yep, that's Dragon's Dogma, which is really all it needs to be. I love Dragon's Dogma. I think that's a super underrated game, so I'm super glad for this franchise to be coming back. Phantom Blade 0 also looks super cool. Again, a lot of games here I thought actually looked cool. It wasn't that it all looked bad. It was more just what was missing than what was shown looking bad. You know what I mean? So I agree with you, Ren. I thought both of those games looked super cool. I'm of course going to be very hyped for Dragon's Dogma because, like I said, I think that first game's super underrated. It's a little old now, so if you've never played Dragon's Dogma and you go back and play it now, I don't know if it'll hit you the same as it did me back when I played it at launch. But it just has a lot of very cool ideas. The way the combat works is very different than other Western-styled RPGs. Now, I know that Dragon's Dogma is a Japanese game, right? It's developed by Capcom, but it was basically Capcom's take on the Western RPG genre. You know what I mean? It was them making their own version of like what a Elder Scrolls could be or something like that of that time period. It's almost like got a little Monster Hunter mixed in there as well. But it's really unique. Like, Dragon's Dogma is a very unique game, and I'm super excited it's coming back. I'm very, very happy, and I was glad to see it there. We got another super chat coming in here from Benji. Benji with the 10 super chat. Hi, Benji. That showcase was disappointing. I think Sony hyping it up so much just before and made the disappointment greater. Why Sony was so off with the expectations of the community. A lot of the hype actually came from outside of Sony. A lot of it actually was coming from journalists and people like that kind of hyping this show up. Don't get me wrong, Sony did as well. Sony's the one who put the name Showcase on this instead of State of Play. And as I mentioned off the top, to me this felt like a State of Play. It didn't feel like a showcase. It just felt like a very long State of Play. Like, it literally felt like you took all the other states of plays that Sony does all the time and you just added another 30 or 40 minutes on top of it of the same type of content. That's what it felt like. It definitely, to me, did not feel like a showcase. and they put the showcase name on it. So why was Sony so off with the expectation of the community? I think this is a very real question to ask because it's been so long since they talked about first party. You know, I think this show isn't met near as negatively if Sony had just had a showcase 8 months ago or 9 months ago. You know what I mean? Like, I think, don't get me wrong, there would have been people always that were like, hey, that showcase wasn't, super hype for me. But I think part of the reason it's being met so negatively is, guys, Sony skipped showcases for over a year. It was like 18 months. So your natural expectation coming into this, and I was one of those people as well expecting this, is, hey, Sony, you have literally not talked about your first party at all this generation. I don't know if people have kind of missed that. They haven't announced anything. Every game that's been released for the PlayStation 5 so far are all games that we've known about essentially since before the PlayStation 5 even came out, or when it came out. They haven't given any new announcements. And here we got a couple, but they were for their service games that were very nebulous, very nebulous. I mean, we essentially learned almost nothing about Haven's game. What is it called? Like Fair something? We learned almost nothing about what Concord is. Which is Firewalk's game. These are such nebulous trailers that it's like, it's almost the same as not being announced. Like, at least you know the setting now, but you don't still know anything about these games. Marathon trailer, again, was super nebulous. However, at least we did get details about Marathon afterwards. But essentially, we're not in much different of a place right now than we were 18 months ago. Spider-Man 2 is a game, again, that we've known about forever. Most of their studios have just nothing announced. And I know that we've had some awesome games coming out of PlayStation this gen. So it's not me really being like Sony's under-delivering games. That's not what I'm saying here at all. Like, because I think that they've released some incredible games. God of War Ragnarok's incredible. I think Horizon Forbidden West is incredible. I think, like, most of the games they've released this gen are incredible. It's more just the roadmap. Like, again, I can't emphasize this enough. We're basically in the exact same spot as we were pre-showcase. Almost nothing changed here. The only thing that changed is these games that we already knew about. I mean, we already knew Haven was making a service multiplayer game. We already knew that Firewalk was making a service multiplayer game. The only difference is we actually didn't even learn what these games are. We just now have names for them and CG trailers for their setting. But other than that, like, nothing has really changed than where we were 18 months ago, because we already knew about Spider-Man 2 back then. So it's very weird. To me, it was a very, very strange marketing choice. If I was Sony, I just wouldn't have done a showcase. Like, I would have just waited. You already waited 18 months. Like, just push it another 6 months at that point. If it was more like, hey, these other big games that we want to talk about just aren't ready to be shown yet, then just wait. You've already waited so long now. Wait another 6 months and then do a huge showcase where you actually show what these games are. It was weird. It was a very strange choice. I would have not made this decision if I was Sony personally, but it is what it is. There's a reason I'm not employed in this industry to do that type of thing. So you could think, Benji, you don't know what the hell you're talking about. But I'm just saying, it was weird. It was a very strange decision. I think Sony had to clearly expect that their community, in regards to Benji's question here, why were they off with their community? I don't know how you don't realize that what people were expecting coming into this show, and maybe Sony just doesn't care. I mean, that's always an option, and you can take that as a good thing or a bad thing, but maybe, frankly, Jim Ryan and Herman Hulst don't care what people's expectations were, and they just had to show in mind of what they were going to show, and that's what they put out there. But pretty interesting. I think this is the worst received PlayStation showcase ever outside of the PS3 reveal. That's the vibe I get. Usually people leave most of these PlayStation showcases, even if they weren't completely blown away, like pretty happy. This to me looks like the worst received PlayStation showcase ever, besides when the PS3 was announced with its price. And it was a crazy and giant enemy crabs and all that sort of thing. So it's been a long time. It's been a long time since a PlayStation showcase was met this bad. Let me take some pictures really quick of the top of this chat because I'm going to lose it. And I feel bad always for the people that drop questions early, because the chats nowadays are getting so much bigger that YouTube always cuts off the top of the chat. So I want to make sure that people that got in here early are going to be able to get some of these questions answered. So I know it sounds weird, but I'm screenshotting some of these. Okay. Let's get back to some more super chats that have dropped in and then the member questions. Oh, OJ's in chat. Player Essence. Dude, super cool, man. Thanks for being in the stream, Player Essence. Really love your work, dude. Check out Player Essence on YouTube. He does all kinds of great content, especially around Nintendo. He's a fantastic at covering Nintendo content. It's great to see you here, Player Essence. I really appreciate that, buddy. Prinny Dude here with a 20. Some people... Wow, that's very generous, Prinny Dude. That is a very generous super chat. Some people say that Sony held back titles because of Xbox. To counter anything Xbox has to show at their showcase later. But my counter argument is, why not put more pressure on Xbox? Why give Xbox any kind of breathing room? Yeah, it is interesting because I feel like there's almost no chance that Xbox doesn't blow this show away. I mean, Xbox would have to, like, really drop the ball to not have a better show than this. They don't even have to have, like, the best Xbox show ever to have a better show than this. And I don't usually like to go into the whole console war thing, but, you know, it's just a debate every year for E3 forever. Who won E3? Like, people have been talking about that for decades, literally. Who had the best show? And it's just become a natural talking point. I think there's almost no chance Xbox doesn't have a significantly better show than this. Like I said, it doesn't even need to be the best Xbox show ever. It just needs to be a solid show, and it'll be better than this one. Why Sony didn't... Because I kind of agree with you. I can't see it being a situation where Sony like wants to hold things and go after Xbox. My theory here, Prinny, and I know there's some other people saying the opposite, but I don't have this insider information. I feel like just some of these studios just must frankly not be ready to show games. And I know there's some people like Tom Henderson and Shinobi that are saying that these studios are, and I consider both of those guys trustworthy. But it's an incredibly odd choice to me if it is true that more PlayStation studios are ready to show games that you didn't do them here. I love indie games, but like at least 50% of the show was indie titles. You know, maybe you cut a few indie games. If it was more like, hey, this thing's going to be too crowded, then maybe you just don't have some of those indie titles and you put some more first party in there. And again, that's no disrespect to indies. I love indie games. I think a lot of the indie games here looked awesome. So it's not me being like 50% indies is bad. It's me being like, if it is true that these PlayStation studios are ready to show, I would have cut some of these indie titles out if it's a length and content thing you're worried about, and I would have put more first party in there. So I don't know. I see some people theorizing that, oh, they're going to wait for Xbox and then they're going to do another show right afterwards to like take their thunder away. That to me seems weird. If that was actually Sony's strategy, it's an utterly bizarre one. Because I think it's going to be the opposite. I've been pretty critical on Xbox lately, if I'm being honest with you, to the point it's been upsetting some Xbox fans. But if you're watching me, I'm just honest, okay? I'm not an Xbox gamer. I'm not a PlayStation gamer. I'm not a Nintendo gamer. I just like video games. And that ebbs and flows. There's times I'm praising Xbox, and there's times I'm pretty critical of Xbox. And I think Xbox has had a pretty disastrous last 12 months. And I've been pretty tough on them. However, I think they're about to get a huge PR win because I think they're going to clearly have a better showcase than this. As long as Starfield looks decent, as long as Hellblade 2 looks pretty good, as long as we see Avowed, which Phil Spencer has hinted Avowed's going to be in this show, and a couple other announcements, that's all it takes. Like, they don't have to have this 10 out of 10, just every game hit to have a better show than this. So, yeah, it's good news for Xbox. They're about to get a big PR win. Now, how much that's going to transfer into like sales or momentum, like in terms of like actually that, who knows? But in terms of a PR and marketing win, yeah, Xbox is clearly about to have one. They would have to drop the ball to ridiculous degrees to have a worse showing than what Sony did, in my opinion. So, yeah, it's good news for Xbox. They need some wins right now. So this is good news for them. Dan Demand here with a $9.99 super chat. Thank you so much, Dan. Really appreciate that. I think something Neil Druckmann said was that they wanted to announce games closer to release. And I wonder if that's not only a Naughty Dog mindset, but a PlayStation one. It very well could be. It very well could be. But here's how I know that that's not really true, Dan, is because the fact that games like Concord and Haven's game were here and Marathon. Those were all incredibly nebulous CG trailers that clearly are for games far away. The only one of those three that got a date was Firewalk's game, Concord, and that's 2024. They didn't even say early 2024, so that game could be more than a year away. And the Haven game and Marathon sound like they're not close at all, especially Marathon. If you watch the Bungie Vidoc, I don't think that game's till like 2025. They did whenever they're like doing that video documentary they put out, it's like 6 minutes long. They essentially were like, we're going dark for a long time and don't expect to hear anything from us for a long time. That says to me like this game is nowhere close. Maybe at best it's late 2024, but it's not anytime soon. And Concord, again, like that's the only one that got a date. Haven's game, nothing. So maybe it's closer than we think, but these all appear to be very far away projects. So I can't see it being a Sony mandate that we're only going to announce games that are close, because some of these games that they did announce, they announced very little, but what they did, some of it doesn't look like it's close at all. Again, maybe there are certain other studios at PlayStation that have this mindset, but I don't think it's an overall PlayStation mindset, or else I think some of these other games wouldn't have been here either. So we'll see. We'll see. It makes sense to me that Neil Druckmann doesn't want to announce games till closer to launch, because I think of how early The Last of Us Part 2 was announced, and he might have felt a little strange about that, having to market that game for years and years. So I get why Naughty Dog would want to do that. And maybe some of the other studios do have that opinion as well, like individually, but I don't think it's a Sony mandate. I don't think so. Or else I think some of these other games wouldn't have been announced. Okay, I think Super Chats are cleared. I don't think I missed any. I did not, so let's get to some member questions, guys. Let's hit some member questions. And right now the poll... Wow, yeah, it's not a surprise to me. That met very negatively. Only 1% right now have voted that they give the PlayStation Showcase an A. Only 14% of it give it a B. 57% of you are with me at a C, and 28% of you are at a D. So that means like, wow. Yeah, only 15% of you rate it higher than a C. So we're talking like 85% of people voted this a C or D. Like I said, I think it's the worst received PlayStation Showcase since the PlayStation 3 one. So not great, not great. Definitely not great. Okay, let's get to some member questions really quick. And I'll have some more polls that we're going to run too, guys, but I'm going to leave that one live for a little bit longer. Benji here with a member question. Hi, Benji. Don't you think Insomniac might need more time for Spider-Man 2? Even if the lightning effects and action sequences looked great, some textures and the water effects are underwhelming. You know, Spider-Man 2 looks great. It didn't look like the visual jump I expected, though, but that's not the end of the world. You know, games are about a lot more than visuals. I will say, at least this showing, and it's hard to say, guys, until we actually play the game. This showing, to me, didn't look like a big jump over Miles Morales. Visually, it looked very comparable, and Miles Morales was a cross-gen game, whereas this is current-gen only. However, you never know. It could be whenever we play this game, it's like significantly better, you know, in many, many areas. It's hard to always say on pre-release footage. I will say, visually to me, it looked very similar to Miles. It did not look like much of an increase, but it could just be what was shown, right? It could just be that segment. We didn't really see much footage of like the actual open world exploration. I know there was like very quick moments of that, but most of it wasn't. So you never know. It could be when we actually play it, like the overall package does look way better. For now, though, it's still a great looking game. Miles Morales was a beautiful looking game as it is. So it's not like it looks bad. It's just, yeah, it does look very similar visually to me as Miles Morales. Clearly an improvement over the original Spider-Man, but I'm not seeing a big jump visually from what they did with Miles. It looks very similar to me. Now, does it need longer? Nah, I don't think so as long as it's ready. Like, I don't think I wouldn't delay that game to make visuals better. I don't think that really will impact sales all that much. This game's going to sell over 20 million units easily, like not even as a challenge. It'll be an easy 20 plus million lifetime. So, nah, no, 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 no. I would only delay Spider-Man 2 if like it's like performing not very well in terms of like actual performance or the content itself is just not going to be ready to go. I wouldn't delay it because graphics though. Personally, because it still looks great. Like, you know, it might not look like Hellblade 2, but they're also very different scoped games. You know, Hellblade 2 to me definitely looks better visually than this, but Hellblade 2 is also going to be a probably pretty linear and smaller game. You know, I don't even think Spider-Man 2 looked visually as good as Horizon Forbidden West, but again, it's hard to compete with Guerrilla. Guerrilla is like arguably the best studio in the industry, or top 2 or 3 in the industry for visuals. So Spider-Man looks plenty good visually. It's not that big a deal, even if it's not the leap maybe some of us thought it would be visually. Joseki here with a member question. Hi, Benji. I do not own a PS5, and this last event didn't give me any new reason to get one. But I don't think it was terrible, only vastly overhyped by everyone who talked about it. It was okay. That said, I was right when we discussed on Twitter about Project Q. Sony positioned it as a PS5 accessory, not as a dedicated handheld. Yeah, this to me was a bit of a surprise. I thought this thing would have some streaming capability. I do not know that this is a worse Wii U gamepad is a good move. Yeah, I'm kind of with you. I don't think this is going to sell at all. Lastly, what is SE smoking? The Splatoon ripoff Square Enix response online is terrible. It feels like some executives saw Splatoon's success and greenlights a project without understanding the reason behind Splatoon's popularity. Okay, so a couple things. We'll go through each one quick individually. I agree with you that the showcase isn't terrible to me. That's why I didn't go lower than a C, because a lot of the games looked pretty cool. It's really it's the omission. I keep saying it. It's about the stuff that wasn't there so much as the things that were there. So I agree with you on that. I don't rate it as terrible, just underwhelming. That's the word I use. It was underwhelming. In regards to Project Q, I think it's not going to sell anything. I mean, maybe some units, but how many people are going to buy? This needs to be cheap, like cheap. Like if this is above $200, they're not going to sell any of them. And whenever I say they're not going to sell any of them, keep in mind, guys, someone's going to always buy some product. I'm saying it will be so niche, it's unbelievable. So Project Q is a strange device. I was assuming, even though the reports were that it was going to be a whatever the wording is, I always forget what they call it, but where you have to be like in the same room essentially as your PS5 to stream the games. I thought like maybe just, you know, the reports on it were missing some information, and this will also have like cloud streaming capability. That at least would have made it a little more interesting of a thing, because you could take it with you on the go, but it doesn't. It's I don't see why this exists. Unless it's just like budget-wise, it costs them almost nothing to make it. That's the only thing I can think of, is maybe the actual like development of this thing was super cheap, and they didn't have to really spend much money on developing and making this thing, and they thought, hey, if we sell 1 million or 2 of these, it's fine. But as a like large-scale device that a lot of people are going to buy, it would have to be very cheap. It'd have to be like $99.99, I think, in order to find any success. And I doubt it is. I would say at $150 at minimum and probably $200 or more. And I don't know who's going to buy that. I just don't really know who's going to buy that. And in regards to the Square Enix Splatoon game, I actually really liked the art style, kind of, like in the CG part of it. Like whenever they were first showing the CG part before the actual gameplay, you could already tell this was clearly a Splatoon game. And but I thought the art style was actually pretty cool. It was almost like a super hyper 3D version of anime. And I was like, this is actually a pretty cool art style. But I didn't think that actually translated near as well to the actual gameplay. Like whenever they're showing that, I was like, ooh, doesn't look near as cool as the CG looked. We'll have to see the game, but I don't have a ton of confidence in this one either. You know, you never know. Splatoon's super popular. I'm not surprised that someone's trying to copy Splatoon, especially a Japanese company like Square Enix. Like, I'm not shocked by this, but who knows how it's going to sell. It doesn't look like it's going to be a big seller to me, though. Casual Noob Gamer, do you think, member question, do you think people going into the show with unchecked expectations made them not like it more? plus the studio's working on stuff. Wouldn't you rather see something when it's closer to release? So two things. First of all, no, because I don't feel like, even if you didn't have high expectations, I don't know how you'd walk away from this show not underwhelmed. Because it just was. You know what I mean? Like, even if you weren't expecting just nonstop every studio announcements, you got almost nothing from PlayStation Studios. Isn't the point of a showcase to showcase first party? You know what I mean? Like, don't get me wrong, third party should clearly be a big part of every showcase. But if it's a PlayStation showcase, or it's an Xbox showcase, or it's a Nintendo Direct, isn't the actual purpose of that vehicle to show your first party games? And the third party games are super important too. They should always be there. But I feel like a showcase, not necessarily like a state of play, or like when Nintendo does their indie directs, but I feel like a platform showcase is to showcase first party. And that didn't happen here. The only game that got showcased was Spider-Man 2. Other than that, it was extremely vague CG trailers. And you can say Helldivers 2. It is kind of a first-party game, but the studio itself is not first-party. So, I mean like PlayStation Studios, like the actual studios. It was not a showcase of them at all. It was primarily third-party. And it was primarily third-party and indie. With a few other things sprinkled in there. So I think even if you had realistic expectations, you would walk away from that pretty underwhelmed. And I think that's playing out in what you're seeing in the voting on my poll and the reactions on Twitters and forums. I think even with realistic expectations, it was just a pretty underwhelming showcase. And in regards to the second part, which is you're asking me personally, would I rather see something close? Actually, no. I am the weird outlier in that I don't care if games are 2 or 3 years away. I still want them announced. And I know that's going to completely vary by people, but I also didn't like Xbox's 12-month show either. I said it really like as soon as it happened. I was like, yeah, not really that much of a fan of that. Not really that much of a fan. I am more of a fan of building a release calendar. Kind of like what the MCU does, where they're like, here's the next phase, and you get all this hype generated. I am much more of a fan of that sort of mentality, to be honest with you, than short-term marketing. And that's going to totally vary. So that doesn't make me say that I'm right for having that perspective. I think if you're the type of person that you don't even want a game announced until it's 12 months away or less, and you don't want to see nothing until then, I think that is completely, perfectly okay. But if you're asking me personally, no, I don't actually. I'm the opposite. I think that's not the way to market that I would do. Some projects, sure, but big, huge, hype-driving projects, I would announce those years in advance. You want to be careful, maybe not 4 or 5 years, because then you start to run into the issues that some of these Xbox games are, where they're like taking 3 or 4 years after release. But like 2 years away, nah, announce it, dude. Who cares? Get that thing out there. But, that's always going to vary. Like, I didn't think it was bad that they announced Firewalk's game and Haven's game and Marathon early. Like, that's not a bad thing to me. It's more just that it was like only that. And then not other things. That was the part that was weird to me. It was weird that it was only a few nebulous trailers and then not a whole lot else there for you to chew on. That was the issue. It wasn't so much that those were there. I'm fine with that. It was just more the lack of all the other content. Where's Stellar Blade at? Which is going to be an exclusive game. Where's Rise of the Ronin at? Where's The Last of Us Factions at? Like, there's just so much that was missing here that's strange. Dude says the showcase was terrible, in my opinion. Okay, nothing wrong with that, dude. Nothing wrong with having that opinion. What's up, JCat? Good to see you in the chat. I think there might have been a super chat. Let me get that super chat. There is. I'm supposed to read this name, so I'm going to read it. A $4.99 super chat here from Second Coming. Oh my god. So silly. So silly. Second Coming with a $4.99 super chat. Do you think the launch and first couple of years of PS5 were successful because of Sean Layden? And now we're seeing Jimbo's era in action. You know what I think we're seeing? I think we're now seeing the pandemic effect on Sony. And here's why I say that, because I know that might sound weird because in many ways we're post-pandemic right now, but let me explain to you why I think we are now seeing actually the COVID impact on PlayStation. And that's because look at the games that they've released so far this generation. Gran Turismo 7 started development pre-COVID. God of War Ragnarok started development pre-COVID. Horizon Forbidden West started development pre-COVID. Like almost all the games that are coming out or have released were all games that at least started their development cycles before COVID even blew up and happened, right? They started these development cycles in 2018, 2019, whatever. They at least had a couple of years of development early on before pandemic even impacted them. However, like games right now that are coming out after that, these are going to be games that started development essentially during the pandemic. And a lot of people will tell you some of the hardest parts of developing games are those first few years. Now, it doesn't mean that like the whole dev cycle is not hard. It is all hard. But a lot of devs, and I'm sure this will vary, but a lot of devs will tell you those first few years are the hardest because that's where you're trying to figure out the gameplay elements. You're trying to figure out the concepts of what this game is. You're trying to figure out the story. You're trying to figure out the setting. Like, you know, you're bringing the very first ideas together about what exactly this game is. And now the projects we're talking about are the ones that would have started that like during pandemic when everything was shifting and moving and people were first starting to figure out how to work from home and all that sort of stuff. So I think that's kind of what's happening. I think a lot of these games from a lot of these PlayStation studios are just very far away. I don't know that it's so much like Jimbo era versus Sean Layden era. Maybe there's some of that. Jim Ryan seems much more gung-ho about games as a service and multiplayer than Sean Layden did. So maybe there's some of that. But I also think that a lot of these big first-party games are just very far away. A lot of them. I think a lot of them must be 2025 or later games. So, you know, the next... I mean, 2024 might not be a very good year for PlayStation. We'll have to see in terms of exclusive first-party output. You know, we'll have to see, but they didn't do much here to build the calendar to make you think that 2024 looks super impressive. But you never know. It could be that they have some big, you know, flagship, single-player, you know, blockbuster-type games lined up for 2024, and they're just not talking about them yet. But they definitely did not build that calendar yesterday. I will say that. That did not happen. So we'll have to see. I think another super chat came in. We do. We got Dead Planet here with a 5 super chat. Sony isn't in trouble, but seems like release-wise, the yearly disparity between the two is going to swing more towards Xbox as their lineup materializes. It's kind of funny because it does look like we're about to see the flip of what happened in 2024. I think 2024... in 2023, like not 2023 so much, 2024, I think we might see the exact flip of what just happened between PlayStation and Xbox. It's really funny because I agree with you, Sony's not in trouble. In fact, before the showcase, I sent out a tweet and I was talking about how the PlayStation brand's like on fire because frankly it is. If you just look at the PlayStation brand across the board, whether that's going to be hardware performance, whether that's going to be software performance, whether it was like goodwill with their community, like PlayStation is in an incredibly strong position right now. And they're still in an incredibly strong position, even with an underwhelming showcase. But it is sort of funny because Xbox, let's just be honest, I've been honest about it. They had a disastrous last year. It was very bad for a platform holder. It was very, very bad. It's kind of funny, though, because it does look like Xbox is finally about to release a bunch of games. And on the flip side, it seems like PlayStation is about to not release a bunch of games. So we may 6 to 8 months from now be having almost the same conversation we've been having for the last year, just with the two players flipped. We very well could be 8 months from now being like, wow, you know, in the last 9 months or whatever, Xbox has released Starfield and they've released Forza and they've released Hellblade 2 maybe, and who knows, we may be even about to be at Avowed. Like, you might be in the situation where it's like, yeah, Xbox had a horrible 2022, But all of a sudden now it's like, wow, who knows? Maybe we're going to have like 4 huge AAA Xbox games within a 10 or 11 month window. And then we might be in the exact opposite with PlayStation, where we've had a lot of huge, awesome PlayStation games released. But we might be in one of those windows where it's like, there's really just been Spider-Man 2 for like 9 months. So it's going to be very interesting to see Dead Planet. We very well could be in a completely flipped conversation from where we've been very soon. And that doesn't mean I'm saying like, oh, like you said, PlayStation's not in trouble. That's not me saying PlayStation's going to be doomed and all of a sudden Xbox is going to be selling 3 times as many consoles as them. That's not what I'm saying at all. But I'm saying narrative-wise, we very well could be in the situation we just were in, only with the players reversed, which is kind of funny. It's kind of funny that we could be sitting there. But we'll have to see. Maybe Sony has some big hitters ready in the next 10 or 11 months that we don't know about. It doesn't look that way. We just had a showcase, and the only big blockbuster game that we have on the horizon from first party. Of course, there's some big third-party deals. Final Fantasy 16 is going to be huge for them. But I'm talking like from PlayStation Studios. The only really huge one on the board coming up is Spider-Man 2. They didn't announce a bunch of new games coming in the next 9 or 10 months from PlayStation Studios. So it'll be interesting. It'll definitely be interesting. George Corona III here with a 5 super chat. With a showcase lacking first-party info, even a logo announce of something could have gone a long way. By the way, my 9-year-old was stoked for Foam Stars. Yeah, you never know. You know, Foam Stars is one of those that it's like, I'm not going to rule it out yet. It looks interesting. Like I said, I thought the first CG part of the trailer was actually really, really cool. I really dug the art style. But I don't know. Foam Stars is one of those that it's like hard for me to even comment on if it'll be big or not, because it's like, I have no idea how to read that game. But that's cool to hear your 9-year-old stoked for it. And in regards to, should Sony have just announced some stuff? I think they should. You know, it is weird to me to hold a showcase and just not build your roadmap. It just is a weird decision. Because you can't even call Haven and Firewalk and Marathon as building the calendar because none of them have dates or even launch windows. The only one with a launch window is Firewalk, and that is just a nebulous 2024. Marathon sounds quite far away, and Haven's game, I just got no idea. So you had a showcase and didn't really build the calendar. It's a weird spot. So should they have announced a few more things? I think so. Or I think, like I said earlier in this chat, you know, for anyone that's coming later, I would have just delayed the showcase. It was already 18 months. You could have announced some of this stuff in just a state of play. You know what I mean? Push that showcase off and instead just do a big state of play, you know, right now at the beginning of the year. Have Spider-Man 2 in it just like you did. Have a bunch of these indies and third-party games in it just like you did, but instead of building it into this huge like 90-minute long thing or whatever it ended up being, you know, 80 minutes or whatever, do a condensed like 40-minute state of play and maybe push Marathon and push Firewalk and push that for a showcase whenever you have a few more big first-party games ready for a showcase. I would have just done that. Like, you know what I mean? People already waited 18 months. Have a big state of play, still show them Spider-Man, still show like Alan Wake 2 and some of these other games you're going to market there, but just save Firewalk, save Haven, save Marathon, and 6 months from now, if you have more games ready to be shown, then just do it then. That to me seems obvious, but maybe, you know, maybe that's why I'm just a dude sitting here on YouTube and I'm not employed at PlayStation. But to me, that seems obvious, but you never know, man. You never know. Benji here with the 10 super chat. Benji, is this the first time we have such a lack of visibility in games coming in the next 12 months from a first-party perspective? Nintendo has Pikmin 4, Sony Spider-Man 2, and Microsoft Forza and Starfield. I would say this is the least we've ever known about PlayStation. Literally the only big PlayStation Studios game, and yes, you can include Helldivers as an exclusive, and it's technically first-party because I believe Sony does own the Helldivers IP. So I know we keep leaving Helldivers out of this, because it's like kind of a weird in-between game. But you know what? Even if we want to like put that in there, let's talk about just PlayStation Studios. Yeah, the only game we know for sure is coming out in the next 12 months is Spider-Man 2. That's it. That's it. We don't know if Concord's in the next 12 months. We know it's 2024, but if it's at the end of 2024, that's not the next 12 months. We don't know when Marathon's coming out. We don't know when Death Stranding 2 is coming out. We assume Factions will be out in the next 12 months, but we still haven't even seen it. Factions not being here was an utter shock to me. Factions has been in development since 2018. At least, because that's whenever, I believe 2018 was whenever they announced, it was somewhere around there, 2018, something like that. That was when they first announced, hey, you know, we're not going to do multiplayer in The Last of Us Part 2, but we're doing, you know, it's spinning off into its own thing. Like, that was the very first time they referenced it. I mean, guys, that game's been in development for like 4 or 5 years. I was shocked it was not here. Shocked that we did not see Factions. That, to me, was the biggest shock. I was like, wow. That is interesting. So again, you assume that's in the next 12 months, but we haven't seen it, so we don't know. The only PlayStation Studios game that we know is in the next 12 months is Spider-Man 2. Pretty weird spot for PlayStation, you know? There very well could be much more than that. But yeah, I don't know. It is a pretty nebulous state. It is a pretty nebulous state for PlayStation right now. My big hope is that they plan on doing a second showcase this year. And that addresses a lot of what we're talking about. That's my hope. We don't know, but my hope is that they're going to go again in like September or something and give us more of a roadmap on what's actually coming. Because it is a weird spot. I've never seen PlayStation in this much of a, we just don't know what the heck is even coming out mode as we do right now. Forcado here with a 5. Could it be that they had marketing agreements in place to have this showcase so they couldn't do it on a State of Play? It's an interesting idea. It's an interesting idea. It could be that some of these games that, even if it didn't have to be a showcase, that they had to show something by a certain date. Like if they're the marketing partner, if some of these games, it's like they were running into a window where, like I said, if it was up to me, I would have just pushed a showcase and made it a State of Play smaller. But if you make it smaller, that means you have to cut a lot of games out. So, I mean, Forcado, that's an interesting theory. It's an interesting theory that maybe, like, some of these titles, they were coming down to contract deadlines, and they were like, you know, if it's a third-party game and you have the marketing deal on it, you have to honor that marketing agreement. You can't just bail. You have to honor the agreements you're making. It's an interesting idea. I don't know if it's accurate, but could be. Maybe they just had a lot of deadlines coming up, and they were like, even if some of these first-party games we'd like to show aren't ready, we have to do something. Maybe. I mean, it is possible. I don't rank it Forcado as like a super likely or a lock, but maybe. It's an interesting theory. I'll say that. All right, let's do another poll. I have another poll in mind. Let's go for poll number 2 here. And I'm going to ask you guys, will there be a second major PlayStation show this year? A simple yes or no. And by that, I mean major. I mean more than just like a very small State of Play. There will obviously be another State of Play this year. Sony does multiple of those per year. I mean, whenever I'm phrasing this question, when I say major show, even if it's not like this big showcase branding we have, I mean, do you think that we're going to get a good look at first party again this year? You know, it's too long to type that phrasing out into a question, but do you think that sometime this year, Sony is going to, in some capacity, give you a major update on first-party games? That's basically what I'm asking you here. Because I kind of think they need one, to be honest. I kind of feel like they need to have one, but I don't know. It's like, I don't know if they'll do it, but I think they should. But we'll see. All right. I lost some chat, but I'm pretty sure I screenshotted every member question that was above the top of the chat. Because, yeah, I got Benji's. I got Joseki's. Okay, so the next member question I have here is Luis SR. I would say majority negative reception, honestly. I would say so. Now, the highest number on my poll was C, and to me, C lands in mixed. So I would say that overall it leaned mixed to negative. I'm not going to go as far back as everyone thinks it's terrible because, like I said, even in my poll, and my poll is not the biggest poll by any means, but even in my poll, the most popular vote was C, which C is definitely mixed. But it definitely did not lean mixed to positive, right? It was definitely either mixed to negative. So, yeah, it's on that spectrum there. Highlander with a member here. I was hoping to see more exclusives. Yes, it was primarily third party and multi-platform. And then Hammersley Ford, yeah, cannot criticize the games because they did not show gameplay for like 90% of them. That's pretty fair. That's pretty fair. We did not see much gameplay here, even from third party. A little bit, but not a ton. Not a ton. Benji gave it a C. Highlander gave it a D. See, was there any other member questions I haven't got? Luis SR also said, for me, it's inexplicable how The Last of Us Factions and Stellar Blade wasn't in the show. Factions is a giant weird one. That's the weirdest part of this by far. Stellar Blade is kind of weird too, but I wonder if that's been delayed. It would be a bummer, but maybe Stellar Blade just got pushed to 2024. Factions is the one that's very weird because this is a game that's been in development for a long time. It would be less weird if Factions was like a recent thing and like we had just heard about it. I mean, this has been in development for years. Very strange that this was absent. I have to think that they're going to still show this game sometime soon. Neil Druckmann outright said they're showing it this year. So we are going to see Factions at some point, but that was definitely the biggest one to me that was like, whoa, that's weird. We ended this show and like right before they did Spider-Man, at the end when you first see Jim Ryan pop up on screen, I'll tell you guys honest to God what I was thinking. Because we just got through like all of this content before there, which was a lot of indie content or a lot of like PSVR 2 content and stuff. All of a sudden you see Jim Ryan pop on the screen. And I was like, oh, this is going to be a longer stream than we thought because they said it was over an hour. And I was like, oh, Jim Ryan's going to pop up. He's going to say, hey, from this point on, you know, we're going to do like, you're going to see some big flagship PlayStation Studios games. I was like, okay, that's what's about to happen. They just saved like 3 or 4 huge, crazy announcements till the end. I was like, here's where we're going to see Factions and Spider-Man and maybe like 1 or 2 other big PlayStation Studios games. And all of a sudden he's like, and now for our last game. And I was like, it like dawned on me instantly. I'm like, Factions is not here. Wow, that's weird. So yeah, that was definitely the one that was the strangest. I don't know what's going on with that game. I'm very hopeful it's going to be awesome, but I'm not going to lie. I'm a little worried that the dev cycle is not going well. I do not know that, but for how long it's been in development, the fact we've still only seen 2 pieces of concept art. I mean, they've shown nothing but 2 pieces of concept art for a game that's been in development for like 4+ years. That's not me telling you it's having a rough dev cycle. It very well could be that Factions comes out and it is the most polished 10 out of 10 sick multiplayer game you've ever seen in your life. But anytime a game's in development for a very long time and all you've ever seen is 2 pieces of concept art, you at least have to wonder. You at least have to be like, is everything on the up and up with this game? Or so we'll see. We'll see. It was weird it wasn't there. It was very strange. Dude said it's the first time that they've been disappointed by a showcase from PlayStation, I'm assuming. And I think all members have gotten questions. So now I'll be able to dive into some free ones. I think there was 1 super chat that came in here at the end. 2, and then I'm going to get to free questions. Beef Hammer with a 2 super case. Is this just going to become a recurring thing now because it's hilarious? Beef Hammer with the 2 super chat. Benji, how will the showcase affect LeBron's legacy? Beef Hammer, I think LeBron's hurt bad by this one. I got to be honest. It's tough. I don't know how LeBron's going to be able to come back from this. You know, it makes you wonder, is really, you know, Michael Jordan the greatest player in NBA history? I mean, it does make you wonder, after this, is LeBron really at the same level? I mean, I don't know, Beef Hammer. It's pretty tough. It's pretty tough. I think the legacy impact's going to be pretty big. Pretty big, yeah. Thanks for that super chat, Beef. Highlander with a 5 super chat. Hey Benji, hope you're doing great. Thanks for the super chat, Highlander. I'm doing good, my friend. My daughter said foam stars and said a shooter she could play. Well, that's 2 different people now in chat, with kids saying that they were excited for foam stars. So you never know. You never know. I mean, foam stars is again, it's not a game that I'm super confident it's going to do well. But it is, like you mentioned, Highlander, it's a shooter that can target kids, which is definitely one thing that helps Splatoon. That's not the only reason by any means Splatoon's successful, but it is a shooter that's typically a genre that at the very lowest rating you get's a T, and let's just be real, a lot of shooters get M's. You never know, man. Maybe they can court that younger audience. You never know. To me, it doesn't seem likely, but you never know. It's 2 people now. That's 2 different people in chat who have said that their kids thought it looked cool. So that's interesting. Oh, and we got, I'm not sure how to pronounce it, Guancos here with a, has become a member. Thank you so much, Guancos, for becoming a member. I really, really appreciate that, man. Very much appreciate for becoming a channel member. And that means, you know, the next, every chat we do this month, man, you get a guaranteed question. Finally made it as a subscriber. You were right, had to join from a desktop. Well, thank you so much. I really appreciate that, man. And yeah, that's what I've heard. It's been a while since I looked at it, but I had heard recently, because I didn't see it on my phone whenever I was watching a different channel, and they had mentioned that. They were like, yeah, in order to be a channel member, you got to do it from desktop. So I really appreciate that, man. That means a lot to me. That really means a lot. All right, let's get to some free questions now. And I took some pictures of the top of chat. Don't worry, I'm gonna be like bouncing around to try and get a lot of free questions in. But I want to make sure that some of these people that were the very first people in chat get their questions answered since they were here early. Blazing Flame, we'll go for about another 30 minutes. I'm gonna make it a pretty big stream today. So I still got time to hit some questions and comments and opinions and whatever, guys. Blazing Flame. So there was a huge lack of first-party titles and studios in this showcase. Why do you think PlayStation is holding back on first-party announcements? When do you think they will show us more? That's the big question, right? Let's look at the poll. That lines right up with the poll I just ran. Right now, most of you, and I'll be honest, I kind of lean on the same boat as you. Right now, 65% of people are saying that they do not believe that there's going to be a second major showcase this year, with 35% of you saying yes. I am more inclined to lean on the side of no as well. So that's a great question, man. Back to Burning Flame. When are they going to announce more? Or Blazing Flame? I got no idea. It's a great question, because there's a chance maybe they squeeze something in at the end of this year. I mean, here's a wild idea. What if Sony plans on bringing back that PlayStation Experience or whatever it was called? Do you guys remember that thing? Where that was like where they announced The Last of Us Part 2? That's the one wild card. What if Sony's planning on bringing that back and they're going to save like some of these big announcements for an in-person event? I didn't really think about that, but it would sort of make sense. If they're bringing back the PlayStation Experience, I think that's what it was called, and you plan on having that be an in-person thing, like that show was, it would kind of make sense to save some of the ones that you know will get big audience reactions for a live show. I'm not thinking they're bringing that back, but that is an interesting wrinkle I hadn't considered until literally just now. Maybe. But I don't know. It's a great question, Burning Flame. Casual Gamer, I've heard from a friend in the know that PlayStation have one more unannounced Marvel exclusive in development. Ooh, we getting leaks. We getting leaks in the chat. Assuming it's true, when do you think it will be announced? Summer to late 2024, early 2025. Sorry for bothering you with my Marvel question, but this is an interesting development and wanted to know your thoughts. It will be my last Marvel question for a while. Sorry again. Never apologize for your guys' questions. I love your guys' questions. It's the whole reason I do these streams. I'm just curious who's making it. Can't be Insomniac, right? Insomniac's doing Spider-Man and they're doing Wolverine. I just can't see Insomniac doing yet another Marvel game. So when they would announce it, I have no idea. I'm assuming we're just going to work off the basis, Casual Gamer, because I do not have this info, that what you're saying here is accurate. To me, it's impossible to predict when it would be announced because it would really depend on who's even making the game. I have no idea what PlayStation Studio would even be making a Marvel game right now. So tough to say, man. Tough to say. I got no idea. I got no idea on that one. That's interesting though. Drift23 says, Benji, I missed a month of streams, internet/life issues. I'm sorry to hear that, Drift23. I hope you're doing better if you're still in chat. How likely do you think the Activision deal goes through? If it goes through, do you think Microsoft will buy more publishers in the future? So my thoughts on this is straight, man. If Europe would have also not sided with with Microsoft, I think the deal was dead. I think that was do or die because since CMA and FTC had already opposed it. If Europe had also ruled against them, I think Microsoft would have walked, honestly. I don't know that, but you know how hard it would be to fight and win all three of those and how long it would take? Whew. So that was big for them. Now, Europe siding with them does also not guarantee this passes, but I think it was literally the saving grace of the deal. Had that also not happened, again, I could be wrong, but I just don't see how if you're on Microsoft's side, you think you're going to fight and win all three of those now with all three united against you. That to me seems tough. So that was a big boon for them that they at least got Europe to agree. I'm like kind of 50-50 on it right now. There's been times I've been all over the place. There's been times I've thought this deal was going to die. There's times I've thought this deal was in a very good spot to pass. You know, I'm not a legal expert. But if you're asking me like where I fall on it right now, to me it's 50-50. It's a coin flip. I have no idea. I have no idea. If they can get FTC to pass this, and it's only CMA, I think they will get the deal through because I think what they'll do is kind of what Michael Pachter has suggested, and that's to carve out the UK as like its own thing in terms of Game Pass and streaming. And what I mean by that is not that Microsoft's going to leave the UK, because you've seen some people theorize that, like, oh, if they can get FTC, Xbox, you know, they just will pull out of the UK. That will never happen. Microsoft has way too much business in the UK outside of video games. Like, they're never going to damage that relationship so badly that they literally pull all of Xbox or Microsoft out of the UK. But one idea Pachter has had, which could prove true, is they could just carve out UK Game Pass as its own thing. It doesn't get Activision games, and it doesn't get Blizzard games, and you can't stream Activision Blizzard games in UK. It would suck for the people in the UK, but maybe they could do something like that. If they could get it passed quite literally everywhere but the UK, maybe they could carve out that concession and be like, okay, well, we are going to do this deal because everyone else has agreed to it. How about UK? The concession we give is, you know, essentially in the UK specifically, nothing changes. Activision Blizzard can't go on Game Pass in the UK specifically. They have their own carved out thing. Activision Blizzard games can't be streamed. It would suck if you're a UK person. That would be very aggravating to me, knowing the rest of the world's going to get Activision Blizzard on Game Pass and streaming and you can't. But it's a thing they could do. So right now they need to really be trying to get FTC beat. In my opinion, I would really be focusing in on FTC. CMA is a big deal too, but you could never make it worth that carved out concession in the US. The US is way too important for the Xbox business. It's the most important market for the Xbox business. So you couldn't carve out, like, we're going to carve out the US that you don't get Activision Blizzard on Game Pass or streaming. Like, you could literally never do that. It would not even be worth buying Activision Blizzard at that point. So they have to get it fully through at FTC. So they're going to focus on everything. But right now, if I was Xbox, I'd be like, we have got to get FTC beat. Because at least with the UK, you can play around with some things, but you can't really in the US. Like, you need this. If you're going to buy this deal, you need all these games on Game Pass in the US, and you need all these games on streaming in the US. Like, you have to have that. You have to. UK, you could kind of, it would suck, but you could carve it out. So that's my opinion. If they can beat FTC, I think they can get this deal through one way or another. But they have to beat FTC. To me, FTC is actually the biggest roadblock right now, since it's their most important market. Like, the US is by an order of magnitude the most important market for Xbox. It's not necessarily the case for PlayStation. They have a lot of success in Japan. They have a lot of success in Europe. Don't get me wrong, US is very important, but they have a lot of success in other areas. Xbox, US is by far their strongest market, so they have to have that in there. I think I had a super chat come in. Two super chats. Highlander001 with a 10 super chat. Benji, I turned 55 on Sunday, and my wife pre-ordered the ROG Ally. Sick. And happy birthday, dude. Happy birthday to Highlander. That will play Xbox, Steam, WoW, and my PS5 games. I do not see the Q doing very well, as I can play PS5 on my cell as well. I agree. The Q seems like a very weird device that I don't think many people are going to buy. Maybe I'm wrong. I would love to be wrong. I'm always rooting for products to succeed. I'm one of those guys that wants the industry to be healthy. I want all games pretty much, unless they're just like a disaster. As long as it's a decent game, I want them all to sell well. I want all the hardware to sell well. I want this industry ultra healthy. But looking at the queue, I just don't know what the sell is. You know what I mean? If this had cloud streaming as well on it, I think it's actually a very interesting item. You know, I'm not saying that that would make it a super huge success that sells 20 million units, but if it was one of those that you could either like direct play it in your house, but if you go, there was also streaming capabilities built on it, I could at least see the concept on why someone would want to buy that. But the fact that you can't take it on the go at all, like you literally just have to be essentially sitting in the room as your PS5 or maybe one or two rooms over, dude, I just don't see how many people are going to buy that. Especially when you have products like you mentioned, ROG Ally and Steam Deck on the market. And again, you know, Q is clearly going to be cheaper than both of those. But I also don't think Q is going to be super cheap. I feel like this thing's going to be like $200 at least, because look at how freaking expensive the DualSense Edge is. And I know that the DualSense Edge is a little bit different of a product, but again, it's not cheap. If they're charging like $200 for the DualSense Edge, I'd be shocked if the Q is under 200. Pleasantly shocked, but I'd be shocked. So it's like, it's still not a cheap device. I don't know. I will have to see, but yeah, I agree, Highlander. I don't feel good about the Q. I just feel like it's not going to sell that well. There's going to be a super small hardcore group that loves the thing, but I just don't know how many people that really is. Chaotic Carnage with a 199 super chat. Expected Naughty Dog, maybe Cope, but another show. No, Chaotic, I don't think you're alone on that at all. I think we all expected Naughty Dog for the most part. I don't think many of us expected Neil Druckmann's next game. You know, I did a video on my channel before the showcase the day before where I looked at every PlayStation studio and I ranked the odds of them being there. And that video did very well for me, by the way, guys. Thank you so much. I really appreciate that. I'm a small YouTuber, so whenever I say it did very well for me, you know, to a big-time YouTuber, these views are, for my whole channel, are very, very small. But for me, where was this thing at? It got to almost 5,000 views. That to me is good, considering the most watched video I've ever had in my life is at 14,000. So 5,000 for me is great. That's great. So that video did pretty darn well for me. And if you watch that video, what I had mentioned was I was like, I considered Naughty Dog a lock because I thought for sure Factions would be here. But I said in that video, like, the odds of getting Neil Druckmann's next game are very unlikely because that's probably very early in development. So I don't think many people were expecting Neil Druckmann to walk on, or it wasn't a stage, but to like show up and be like, here's The Last of Us Part 3, or here's my new IP. I don't think many people expected that, but I think we all thought Factions would be there. So you're not alone, Chaotic. It was a very strange omission. That was a strange one. To me, that was the strangest one of the whole show. That was the one that was most like, where is this game? like where is it? But clearly they have something lined up, because Neil did outright say that they will show this game this year. So I don't know if the cope is accurate that we'll get another show, but at the very least you are going to see factions. Neil himself said it. So you'll see it this year, but I don't know when now. Justice Bolt. Actually, I'm not going to read this comment because it's not very useful. It's kind of just like yelling about stuff. I try to read most of your guys' like comments and questions, but not if there's not much quality to it. No offense, Justice Bolt, but there ain't much quality in your comment. You might be a good person, but there's not much interesting about your statement. SD, let's be real. Showcase didn't deliver. Yeah, I agree. It's pretty obvious, and there's not another way around, but let's go for the content. Sony revealed 5 owned games: Concord, Far Games, Destiny Final Shape. Well, Destiny Final Shape's not a game. It's an expansion. Fair Game, Destiny, and Final Shape. CGI inspired my gameplay. My question is, why do you think... I think I got cut off. Okay. So, yeah, again... So, like, it was cool that Concord and Fair Games were here. But, again, they didn't do anything. No release timings, really. No additional info on what they're going to be. I'm not opposed to them showing them just like that, by the way. Just like I said. This whole negative reception to me is not about what was in it. It's about what's omitted. I think some people are latching too much on... hey, well, they did announce Firewalk's new game, and hey, they did announce Haven's new game. You guys are lying that said that they didn't announce anything. I don't think that's addressing the issue. I don't think most people are upset that Firewalk's game was here in a CG trailer, and I don't think many people are upset that Haven's game was here in a CG trailer. Like none of that is really what's going on here. The issue is about what's omitted. It's not about what was in it. It was about what was omitted. You know what I mean? It was the fact that Factions wasn't here. It was the fact that Stellar Blade's a no-show. It was the fact that Rise of Ronin's a no-show. It was about that there was no flagship single-player game new announced here. Like, it was all that. It wasn't really anything to do with Firewalk or Haven or any of that. It was just about what was omitted. If those things I mentioned are in this show, if you see Rise of Ronin and it looks great and you maybe get a release date. If you see Stellar Blade is in the show and it gets a release date and it looks great. If you see Factions in the show and it looks great. And if you see one, not a ton, one new single-player AAA game announced, you do those things and the entire rest of the showcase is quite literally identical to what it is, the reception is completely different. So it's not about what was shown being an issue. It was about what was omitted. That is what Sony's running into. They omitted a lot of the things that people were expecting to be here that just weren't there. We got Sam Rochter here. Do you think PlayStation is home about? We actually already addressed this one. Marvel Fanatic, Benji, do you think we could get a Spider-Verse game in the future since the movies are so popular? When do you think it could happen after Insomniac finished Spider-Man franchise? I'd love to see it because I'm one that keeps saying on here, I want to see a Spider-Gwen game. I want Spider-Gwen. Whether Spider-Gwen gets her own game like Miles Morales was, or if Spider-Gwen shows up as a character in one of these Spider-Man games, I want Spider-Gwen. Do it. Insomniac, if one of you are watching this video, some of you guys follow me on Twitter, do it. Do Spider-Gwen. I'm telling you right now. It differentiates it. It gives you a totally different type of character to play as. You already got Peter. You already got Miles. They're super cool. They're awesome. Love them. But it gives you a whole different kind of protagonist that could have a completely different type of story. That doesn't mean that I think you put Miles and Peter on the back burner. That's not what I'm saying. But I'm telling you, bring Spider-Gwen in somehow. Somehow. It's a good idea. I'm telling you. So yeah, could there be a Spider-Verse game where you have Miles and you have Peter and you have Spider-Gwen? That would be hype as heck. So yeah, I'd love to see it. Now, will it happen? I don't know, but it would be super sick. All right, let's take some questions in the chat now from people that are in chat still, because I did like the top of them, but I know there's some of you still live. We're going to go for like another 10 or 15 minutes. Let's see. Guys that are in chat, I'm scrolling down. So if you're in chat right now and you start dropping questions, you're going to get questions answered. This is now live Q&A. All right, I'm scrolled pretty low, so I'm going to start right around here. I'm not sure if this is addressed to me, but if so, it's a strange comment. I'll read it because I'm not sure if I understand it, but maybe you're talking about other people. If it's applying to me, it doesn't really make sense. Says, missing is your opinion who doesn't work for any of the three companies. You don't know the roadmap they have to reveal all the games, so stop guessing and overhyping. I didn't hype anything. I literally don't know what you're talking about. So if you're talking to me, I think you're targeting the wrong person. People you should be talking to are like Jeff Grubb. Love Jeff, but Jeff was definitely hyping the showcase. I'm a dude. One thing that's weird whenever you start to build up like an audience, not that I'm like super famous or anything by any means, but I have like almost 70,000 followers on Twitter now. People like start to think of you as like this, like, what's the word I'm looking for? They start to think of you as like this, not a real person. You know what I mean? They start to think of you as like this concept. They start to think of you as like a concept and not a person. DJ32X, I'm just a random dude. Like, I'm just sitting in a room, in a house, and I'm just talking. So, I am well aware I don't work for any of the companies. I probably have the most honest live chat of anyone in all of gaming. I'm on here all the time telling you guys how, like, I don't really know much. I'm just a dude. I've just built an audience, and I just talk to you. So, again, if you're talking about someone like Jeff Grubb, who I really like Jeff Grubb, but he's like an actual journalist. He works for websites. Jeff Grubb was talking about this being phase 2 of PlayStation 5. Like, if you're going into it like that and you're upset about people like that, I get it. If you're like targeting me for your anger, it's a weird spot to target because I am literally no different than you, DJ32X. I'm a random guy. I don't get paid to work in the industry. I don't write for anyone. I don't work for anyone. I'm a random guy. I'm not even a YouTuber. Like, I don't even consider myself a YouTuber because I don't make tons of money and like make a living on YouTube. I'm a guy that goes in and checks people out. Like, you know, like when you go to the grocery store and there's a guy stocking shelves and then there's a guy that just like rings you out. That's literally what I do for my life. Let's see. Dangerman says CMA considers it as a global actor, so I don't think they can carve out. Yeah, I don't know. I don't have the legal info there. That is just what I saw Michael Pachter say. And I know Michael Pachter is going to know a lot more about the business of law than I am. So, you know, we'll see. I don't know if they can actually do that, but I did see Pachter theorize that like that's how he thinks they can get it past the CMA. But maybe you can't. Maybe CMA has been like, you can't do a carve out in terms of like Game Pass. I don't know. I just saw Pachter theorizing that, which was an interesting idea to me because I hadn't considered that. But maybe Pachter don't know what he's saying. Ditto News says, no, I was late. It's okay, Ditto News. You can still drop something. I'm still going live for another like 10 minutes or so. Sir Bruin, it may not sell here, Benji. This might be a stronger push for the Asian market. Yeah, it's an interesting idea. Maybe they think Q can do well in Asia. It's not a bad idea. I don't know. Like I don't know if that would actually do well there or not. I know that Asia is a market that definitely really likes handheld devices, but from what I understand, a lot of why like handheld devices do well in Asia is for commuting, because a lot of people use public transport and they commute a lot through public transport. Again, I don't live in Asia. This is just one thing that I've understood about the handheld industry there. And the problem is that this isn't a true handheld. So the main reason why people, as far as I understand, have really liked 3DSs and even PSPs did very well in Japan, and 3DS and Switch, is because that commuting aspect. And the Q wouldn't help in that regard because you can't take it with you. So, but I don't know. Maybe like even within the household, handhelds are just more popular than a console attached to a TV. So maybe Sony thinks so. Oh, and you can be out of your house but in Wi-Fi. Okay, can you? I don't know. Let's see. Sour Below 18 question: what does Xbox need to do in your opinion for their showcase? And do you think Sony hold off to have a response for the Xbox showcase and ABK deal? I addressed earlier in terms of like the ABK deal. Like, I don't believe that that's why they held off. I just have never believed that. I don't think that that has anything to do with like why game announcements have taken a while. Now, what does Xbox need to do for their showcase? Well, I've always said that this needed to be a very, very good showcase for Xbox, and I still stand by that after like how rough of a year they had in 2022. Like 2022 was brutal for them in terms of releases. So they still need to have a very, very strong show. But I will say I think the pressure has been taken off of Xbox by quite a bit. If Sony had come out here like I suspected and like many people thought was going to happen, and they had this like crazy banger, like just nonstop, crazy, like, wow, we got 3 or 4 new big giant AAA announcements from first party that, aren't even all service games. Like some of these games we all kind of associate with PlayStation, like had it been a crazy popular showcase, I think that it really would have put pressure on Xbox coming off of a very poor last year. And now all of a sudden you're going after Sony, which is usually the opposite. Usually the Xbox showcase happens before the PlayStation showcase. So if it would have been like a 1-2 punch like that, you had a very bad last year and then Sony comes out here and looks incredible, all of a sudden you're like, dude, you need to have the like best showcase you could ever possibly have if you're Xbox. A lot of that pressure's been taken off. Now, there's still going to be pressure to deliver because that one half of what I just mentioned didn't go away. They are still coming off of what was, let's just be honest, Phil himself has even said this. Phil himself has said it, guys. They did not deliver the way they needed to last year. So they still need to have a good showcase because you do have to somehow kind of make up for what's been happening over the last 12 months. But it's not quite as much pressure as it could have been if this thing was like some 10 out of 10 crazy showcase. So I would say it's good news for them. They just need to have a good show. Good show. They need to have a very good show. And what do I mean by good show? Clearly, obviously, Starfield's here and it needs to look great. Hellblade 2, I think we all assume is going to be here because it seems like Hellblade 2's release date's not that far away. It seems like that's a game releasing in the next 12 months, so I would say Hellblade 2 needs to be here and have a date and look awesome. And they need to show a couple of these games that have just been waiting forever. They don't need to show every single one of them, but some combination of Avowed and Perfect Dark and Fable and Everwild and The Outer Worlds 2, like all of these games that are just nebulously announced, they need to show some of them. Doesn't need to be every single one, but they can't just keep going through these showcases with so many of these games announced that we don't see. So that would be it for me. It needs to be Starfield looking great, obviously. Forza's already there. It needs to look great, obviously. Hellblade seems obvious. Like, those are all the obvious ones. And then a couple more. You always need some new announcements, but also a couple of these games that we've known about that we've still never seen. A few of those need to show up. GTA, man, I'm so partially I agree with what you're going to say, but I'm actually going to spin it a little bit. GTA Man says CG trailers to announce new IPs is a horrible idea. No one knows what those games are going to look like and play like. How could anyone be excited by those reveals? So I'm a little bit nicer to CG trailers than some people are, but I am GTA Man going to spin what you're going to say about, I think, another reason why these CG trailers have been met a little more negatively than usual, because they're CG trailers for multiplayer games. And that makes it a little bit even more not as accepted, because what's the real reason why people play multiplayer games? Like, specifically, it's specifically for how they play, you know, like what the actual game is. And don't get me wrong, gameplay and all that's important in single player games as well, but people play single player narrative games for a lot of other reasons than just the moment to moment gameplay, right? Whether it's exploring an open world, if it's an open world game and what that open world's like, and you know, if it's a story heavy game, like what the story and characters are like. And some of that you can kind of convey decently well in a CG trailer. I'm of course always going to root for an in-game trailer over a CG one, but you can at least communicate some of that decently well through a CG. But a multiplayer specifically game, people are going to be harsher on a multiplayer CG trailer because, like, the only point of multiplayer is its moment-to-moment gameplay. And of course, I know that, like, in multiplayer, they're trying to do things like set up, you know, some story attached to it in some of these games like Apex and characters that you know. But, like, 99% of the reason multiplayer games are played are that moment-to-moment gameplay. And you can't really convey that in a CG trailer. So that's, I think, another reason why Firewalk and Haven and Marathon were met a little more negatively than usual. A lot of good points, and also points I kind of like agree and disagree with. People are talking, I'm seeing several people talking about like games as a service and how like CR Bruin, for example, is talking about how like a lot of young people really like games as a service games, and like it makes sense why Sony's doing that. And I agree with that part of it. But then you're also saying other parts that I agree with, where people are talking about how like the pie is not super big and it's hard to find success there. I agree with both sides of that. I'm only slightly worried that Sony's about to run into the exact same problem Ubisoft's currently in. And what I mean by that, and I don't think they're going to, by the way, so calm down. I still think Sony's going to be pretty okay. But one thing I'm a little worried about, and I talked about this, guys, a long time ago, and I proved to be right. You know, back to that other person earlier that was saying, like, I don't know anything or whatever, if they were talking about me. Why do you think Phil Spencer follows me? Why do you think Aaron Greenberg follows me? Why do you think Neil Druckmann follows me? Why do you think a lot of people in the industry follow me? I am not like some genius, guys, by any means. Back to like what I said earlier, I am just a dude. But I at least somewhat know what I'm talking about, or people would not follow me. You know, you don't build an audience unless people think that you at least somewhat know what you're talking about. And what I'm tying that into is I said a long time ago when Ubisoft did this big announcement that they're going all in on free to play and they're going all in on live service games. I said literally the conference call that had happened. I was on the earnings call when they made that announcement. And I was like, "Ooh, I don't like the way this sounds," because you're going so heavy into it. You have to be very careful, because the reality is, I just did a talk about this on like my last chat or the chat before that. It was recently. It was within the last like 3 or 4 chats. Games as a service multiplayer games to me right now are riskier than single player games. And what do I mean by that? Every publisher right now is hearing the siren call of Apex Legends. They're hearing the siren song of Fortnite. They're hearing the siren song of Destiny. And they're hearing billions of dollars in revenue and hundreds of millions of dollars of profit. And of course, if you are a publisher, you hear that. You hear this earnings call that EA's on where they're talking about how Apex is just like raining cash on them. You hear, Epic talking about how we're just making, every money known to God on Fortnite. And you're like, I want that too. And I get wanting that. I 100% understand it. But here's the thing you have to remember. Getting the next Fortnite, getting the next Apex, getting the next Destiny are so unfreaking believably hard, okay? Because they already have massive, massive, massive built-in audiences. And how are you going to pull people off of those games? Because as we just talked about with the pie, there's only so many people, okay? Even if there's 500 million people playing multiplayer games as a service games, there's still a limit. You hit a point where like, this is the overall, and it's always growing, but it's kind of growing more slowly or whatever. There's only so many people that are playing these types of games. And so many of them are just locked into Call of Duty. That's what they and their friends do. And so many of them are just locked into Fortnite. And so many of them are just locked into Apex. Like, that's their nightly thing. They get with their buddies, they jump on Apex, and they play it. Now, that doesn't mean that I don't think publishers shouldn't be trying to get the next Apex or Call of Duty. You absolutely should, right? It's business negligence if you ignore games as a service. You need to try to get a games as a service title because of the sort of money they can generate. But what you need to be very careful of is just how much money and resources you spend trying to get there. Because I'm just going to be honest with you. Most of them aren't going to ever become Apex. Most of them are not ever going to become Destiny. Most of them aren't ever going to become Call of Duty. That's just the truth. Now, there's going to be rare ones that break through and become that next giant live service game. There is, right? Someone had to make Destiny to get Destiny. Someone had to make Apex to get Apex. Like, you need to be trying, but you also need to be careful. And Ubisoft should be a warning for the entire industry right now about what happens when you go too far down that road. Look at the utter disaster that Ubisoft's in right now. And that's not my opinion, that is fact. If you look at the current state of Ubisoft, it is not in a good place. And so much of that is because they poured so much resources and developers all onto free-to-play and games as a service at once. They poured tons of it. And you don't have infinite resources, right? If you're going to have now 6 studios building games as a service games, that's 6 other studios that can't work on other projects, right? That means they're locked in on that now. And if half of those fail, well, half of those studios and resources you just put went straight into failing. So, again, Sony, however, is doing something pretty smart. And I sent a tweet about this. This is why I'm less scared for Sony than I am about Ubisoft. Because Sony's not really pulling resources away from single player, and they're not really pulling resources away from traditional. Essentially what their idea is right now is growth. Like, their growth vector is to get them to that games as a service. Look at their acquisitions. Bungie, they bought Bungie. What does Bungie do? Games as a service titles. They bought Firewalk. What is Firewalk doing? Is it making games like Naughty Dog and Sucker Punch do? No. They're making a live service game. They bought Haven. What's Haven doing? Is Haven making, the next The Last of Us? No. They're making a service game. Like, most of their additional investment right now is growing an area that they had a weaker capability in. Pretty smart idea, to be honest with you. Like, if you're going to go down that we're desperately chasing a live service path, that's a better way to do it than to take these teams and just be like, well, now you're making a games as a service, and you're making a games as a service, and you're making a games as a service, and you don't have a choice. We're pulling you off, and you're doing that now. Like, at least I think they're taking the right approach to get there. But we'll see if it pays off. They do need to be careful about how much they're spending, because you don't want to see tons of layoffs now, right? If they make 10 live service games like they're saying, and if 5 of them fail to hit, how much money are you spending, Sony? Is that going to result in a ton of layoffs? Like, it's a difficult balance. And the thing that makes this different than single player, because I had mentioned, how I feel right now that games as a service is actually riskier than single player. It's because single player, like people that play single player games, there's going to be risk with any game. If you make a single player game, it's risky too. But with single player focused titles, at least, they're finite, right? If you're someone that prefers single player over multiplayer, maybe you dabble in multiplayer, but you play single player, even if the game's long, let's say it's a 30-hour game. You beat that 30-hour game and you're looking for your next game. There's people that spend thousands and thousands of hours on Call of Duty and Apex and Destiny and they don't leave, and they do it for 5 or 6 years. It's a whole different ball game trying to pull someone away from Destiny to play your game than it is saying, hey, that guy that likes single player games or that girl that likes single player games, they just spent 30 hours on a game, but they beat it and they want their next game now. You at least have a finite ending, and you can at least hope that you can pull those people over to their games. We're seeing a lot of single-player successes right now. Jedi Survivor did super, super well. Dead Island 2 is doing incredibly well. Dead Space Remake did well this year. Final Fantasy 16 is going to be huge. Spider-Man 2 is going to be huge. God of War Ragnarok was huge. There's tons of huge single-player games. So, again, I'm not telling you single-player has no risk. I think games as a service is riskier. I think it's a riskier business venture. Now, the payoff is higher. And that's why publishers are so utterly desperate to get Apex. And I use that word desperate as a real word. They're desperate for it. They want Apex on their thing so bad in terms of like one that they own. They want Call of Duty to be their game so bad because there's so much upside, right? On an Apex Legends, outside of the most rare circumstances ever, you can make so much more money than a single player game. So that's why they're hearing that siren call. They want it. They want to make that game. Good luck. Maybe you'll get there, but good luck. All right, long rant. Sorry, but I think it's interesting. It's like one of the big things right now. So, long answer, I know. This is a long stream. Whatever, I'm having fun. I don't care. Having a good time. Beef Hammer says, but outside this room is Benji's ivory castle. No, I am lower middle class. I'm just a low middle class dude. I'm no different than like every person you know. Like I'm a pretty bog standard individual. Amish Lee Cord says, Ivory Castle, LOL. I wish I had an Ivory Castle. Master of Flitch, do you think they will hit their investor target to release 10 live service games by March 2026? I don't know. Hard to say. Hard to say. I don't know. It's hard to predict something like that. Prexum, Benji, I don't think it's impossible Jeff has the Last of Us multiplayer factions big reveal. It could be. If I recall, he debuted the first concept art for the game. That might explain why it skipped the showcase. It's an interesting theory. I've been wondering similar. I've been wondering if that's going to be there or if it'll be on the anniversary of The Last of Us 1's release date, which is in June. I would say I hope it's going to show up soon because it missing from this showcase was so bizarre. I think people are going to start getting pretty worried about that game if we don't see it soon. So maybe, I mean, Prexum, it's not crazy to think that it could be there. It could be at Summer Game Fest, sure. I have a feeling Death Stranding 2 is. I mean, you know how Kojima and Jeff are boys, so I feel like that's going to be there. Crying Jim Ryan, a random dude playing a dude disguised as another dude. I only say that because I try to make it clear to people, like, don't overhype me, okay? Don't think of me as like this big guy who knows everything and like has all this industry influence, because I'm not. I am just a dude. I try to make that very clear to people. Don't put too much expectations into me. Oh, we had a super chat. The Claymores that I missed, and we're about to wrap the stream up. I know it's been going for a long time, but it's been a fun chat, man. It's been a fun chat. Mixed show for me. Sony's 2023 is fire. Final Fantasy 16, Helldivers 2, Spider 2 are day one purchases, but the big issue was 2024 plus games had... Yeah, exactly. Yeah, had zero gameplay. Exactly. That's where the main issues are coming from. You hit the nail on the head, Claymores. As I keep saying, the issue for this showcase is that people felt like they didn't get the future of PlayStation really mapped out for them. You know, it's kind of what you go into these showcases expecting. Whether that's going to be the next 12 months, whether that's going to be the next 2 years, not just on PlayStation. People have these same expectations for Xbox and they have these same expectations for Nintendo. Sony is not some rare outlier that's getting bullied right now. You've seen very negative feedback to Nintendo showcases and to Xbox showcases. The reason people are mad is they're like, I didn't see what's coming from PlayStation Studios that I'm supposed to be excited about, you know, next year, for example. You just don't know, you know, like what's going to really be going on next year. Hopefully a lot, you know, hopefully there is. I'm not telling you that they're not going to have 2 or 3 huge, awesome, amazing games in 2024. They absolutely might. It's just they didn't actually show that here. And so it makes sense why people are pretty underwhelmed. And they're like, besides Spidey 2, I don't really know exactly what I'm supposed to be looking forward to currently. You know what I mean? Third party, of course, but a showcase is supposed to showcase the platform holder primarily, and then third party as well. Munty, Benji, just got to say I love your positivity on social media. You bring a fresh point of view amongst all the negativity. Keep it up. I really appreciate that. What do you think Xbox needs to show at their showcase? Yeah, I try, Munty, to be positive, but realistically positive. I try to not be... It's a weird word, but it has some truth to it. Have you ever heard the term toxic positivity? And that's like supposed to represent the opposite of toxic negativity, where you have some people that just live to be negative. You have some people that are just so overly positive constantly that you kind of have to wonder if it's disingenuous. You know what I mean? Like you're just being positive to try to get people to like you. I try to be realistically positive, and whether I succeed at that or not, you'll be the judge of me. But what I mean by that is I try to be positive about this industry because I love the video game industry, and anything that I love, of course, I'm going to root for. So I definitely would say I lean more on the side of positivity than negativity, but it doesn't mean I can't be negative or critical. Like I've definitely been, I think, pretty fairly critical of Xbox over the last 12 months. And I've also been, you know, pretty critical of this PlayStation showcase. So I want you to feel like you're always getting the truth with me. But I'm also not going to be just like so positive that it's like you look at me and you're like, you really think that, or are you just saying that so that, you know, I get along with you? You know what I mean? It's a fine line between positive and just like so positive that you have to question people. But, you know, we're all just people. And I already talked about what Xbox has to do with their show, I think. Yeah, that's a good point, Hugh, man. This was another weird one. Spidey didn't even get a release date. I can see that getting pushed to 2024. I do think that this might have killed the September rumors. If it was September, man, you would think that would have gotten a date, right? It's already about to be June. Now, it's not impossible still that they squeeze it into September, but I will say, Hugh, man, that no release date here was a huge surprise. Huge surprise. I would say that it's far more likely now that Spidey's October, November, or December even, than I suspected, right? Like, because there was all those rumors about September. If it was really September, I think you would have gotten the date here. I'm not going to say it's impossible, but September seems unlikely now. Seems unlikely. Considering how close we are. I mean, guys, June is literally days away. So it's like June, July, August, September. I mean, you're talking 3 or 4 months to put a date on it. Again, not impossible. You can still squeeze it in at the end of September, but you're cutting it close. You're cutting it really close to make September. So it's probably later than that now. Probably is October, November, or December. We had a super chat come in from J2 Blue in the Sky. Thanks so much. At some point, I'm stopping this stream. I'll let you know when. It is soon, but like we're just going, baby. We're going and we're flowing. J2 Blue in the Sky with a 5 super chat. A bit late to the show, but I was very underwhelmed by the showcase. Spider-Man 2 looks great, but there was very few games I thought excited me. J2 Blue in the Sky. We've been going for like almost 2 hours now. You're in the same boat as most people. There's a few people that felt very positive about the show, but J2 Blue in the Sky, all I can tell you is that you are lined up with most people. Most people thought the show was mixed to negative. right? Somewhere in that range. You're going to get a few people that were super positive on that, and that's okay. There's nothing wrong with loving this show. If this show is a 10 out of 10 to you, that's all right. It's all opinion-based. J2 Blue and Sky, I would say you line up with pretty much the vast bulk of the audience. Most people are in the same spot as you, man. Few more questions. Just a handful of questions and we're done. Yeah. CR Bruin, I agree with this. This is why I said I'm less scared about what Sony's doing than what Ubisoft did. They've recently acquired these studios making games as a service games or investing in second party to do it. Sony's core studios outside of Naughty Dog aren't making GaaS. There's a couple other ones. Guerrilla's making an online Horizon game, but at the same time, Guerrilla's definitely still making the single player game. So that's why I am definitely less concerned about Sony pursuing games as a service than I was about Ubisoft, because the strategies were different. Ubisoft essentially just pulled everyone into, you're all making GaaS games now and free to play. There was a few exceptions, but like most of Ubisoft just like almost overnight went from making the traditional style games that made them successful to now we're just going to take y'all and we're all going to flip it to free to play or GaaS. And Sony, at least, I do think it's a better strategy to get a lot of that service growth that they want out of new investment. I do think that's smart. Uncensored Maverick, Benji, I know this is tiring, but do you think we'll ever see a Bloodborne remaster remake, or Sony completely moved on from that type of games and now are focusing primarily on live service? Bloodborne's super weird because this was the first year I talked about how I heard some rumblings that not necessarily Bloodborne would be here, but that Bloodborne might be making a comeback. I saw a couple other people said that they heard some rumblings, and you saw Jeff Grubb not say that he heard rumblings, but him say that it made sense to him that Bloodborne's coming back. I don't know. Bloodborne is such a weird one. I have always said, because, I get asked about Bloodborne constantly, just like everyone, right? I think anyone that covers games, if you do it in an interactive way like I do, people are asking you about Bloodborne. I've always said it's a big mistake if they don't ever pursue anything with Bloodborne in the future. I think a Bloodborne remake or sequel would instantly outsell the original Bloodborne lifetime almost overnight. And why do I say that? Because From Software hit a completely different level after Elden Ring. The big question you have to ask, though, is can you get From Software to make Bloodborne 2? Because would Bloodborne 2 from another studio have the same sort of success as a Bloodborne 2 from Software? No. You know what I mean? I think you can still have it be very successful, but if you just get the choice, you can have From Software make Bloodborne 2, or you could have Blue Point make Bloodborne 2. You just get to pick. Of course you're going with From Software, right? So my thing is if you can get them to do it, like if you can convince From to do it, you're crazy if you don't make Bloodborne 2. If you slap Bloodborne 2 on the screen made by From Software after what happened with Elden Ring, guys, this thing annihilates Bloodborne 1. I'm not saying it would sell as much as Elden Ring, but it would annihilate the performance Bloodborne 1 had. So, we'll just have to see. I don't know. It's crazy to me, though, that they've still never done anything with that IP. It's crazy. The only reason I can think is there's something going on with that IP. We know Sony owns it, but what I mean is maybe Sony truly do not want to touch it unless it's going to be From Software. So, and maybe they just can't get From Software on board. I don't know. But they're crazy if they don't ever do something with Bloodborne. Crazy. Sounds PP7. Benji, are you surprised by the dreadful Lord of the Ring Gollum reviews? I hate to say it, but no, I thought it always looked bad. Do you think it hampers any future plans for the Lord of the Ring IP in gaming? What an underutilized IP. Why there hasn't been a giant Lord of the Rings RPG similar to Skyrim, I have no idea. I don't know why you wouldn't make that game. It's a guaranteed seller. Guaranteed. I'm not even theorizing. It's a guaranteed seller. Now, it has to be good. So when I say it's a guaranteed seller, if it's a trash game, then it's not going to. But if you have a Skyrim type game, and of course it doesn't have to play exactly like Skyrim, you guys know what I mean. A big, giant open world game that is a true RPG. The Middle-earth games, by the way, did very well. And that was as more of an action open world game. If you made a straight up RPG, open world, go to Rivendell, go to the Shire, I mean, do you guys understand how well that would sell? Why it doesn't exist is a strange one. That's a strange one. Strange one. We've seen how big licensed games can get whenever they're quality. Look at Jedi Survivor and Fallen Order. Look at the Spider-Man games. You know, like if you nail a big IP and you do it well, the sales can be out of control. It's strange. Why this game still doesn't exist, I have no idea. If I owned the Lord of the Rings IP rights, I would be desperately trying to get that exact game made. Giant open world Lord of the Rings game. But am I surprised by Gollum? No. I mean, I'm not trying to be rude to the devs, but I thought that game just always looked bad. I thought it always looked bad. All right, I probably should stop. Because it's a very long stream. I think I'm going to stop there, guys. I tried to hit as many questions as I can. We've been going for a hot minute. I've been going almost 2 hours, like right at 2 hours. I try to not drag these things out. So I'm going to bounce. All right, guys, I'm going to bounce. I had a great time in the stream today. I hope you guys did too. And it was fun. First of all, thank you everyone for all of the super chats. There was a ton of them today. Very, very much appreciate it. Thank you to the one new channel member that we got during the stream. I very much appreciate it. Thank you for all of the continued support on Twitter and YouTube. The YouTube channel is definitely growing. Again, it's not a big YouTube channel, but it's definitely increasing in viewership from where it used to be. Twitter, very close to 70K. I think I'll get over 70,000 next month. And that's, dude, I very much appreciate that from you guys. So yeah, we're going to bounce there. I hope you guys had fun at the showcase. You know, even if it underwhelmed you or not, there was still some cool things there. There was definitely some games that I liked. Alan Wake 2 just looks spectacular. You guys know how long, if you know me, I've been waiting for Alan Wake. I'm one of those weirdos that played Alan Wake back at launch. Like, I've been a fan of Alan Wake for that long. I didn't come to Alan Wake later. I'm an OG Alan Wake fan. I've been waiting for this game forever and never thought I was going to get it. And it's finally happening, and it looks incredible. I know there's a lot of drama around the digital-only release, and I understand that. But at this point, I'm just so thankful that I'm getting a game I never thought I was going to get, that it's like, whatever. If that game cost $100 and Sam Lake slapped me in the face in order for me to get it, I had to give him $100 and take the face smack, I think I would do it. That is how long I've wanted this game. So Alan Wake 2 just looks tremendous. Spider-Man 2 looks great. I think Marathon actually sounds awesome. That Bungie video documentary really got me interested in it. The CG trailer, I was a little like, it looks cool, but I don't really understand what this game is. But then I encourage you, if you haven't watched it yet, they released like a 6-minute long video documentary on like what the game is. Very cool. Made me super interested. So I know there was a lot of negativity here, but there was also some very cool stuff in the stream. Absolutely, there were some games I'm very excited about. And we're going to bounce there. I think we had a super sticker right at the end. Whoa, a very generous one. Skinny Mike with a 20. Here at the end, just saying thanks for being you. Well, dude, Skinny, thank you. That is, wow, that is very, very kind. And then George Campbell coming in here with a $4.99 here at the end. You guys are very, very kind. I appreciate you guys so much. We're gonna wrap the stream there, but you guys are incredible. Thank you so much, everyone. Thanks for a great turnout today. We were over 100 almost the entire stream. We're gonna bounce. Like the video if you haven't already. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Stay safe, play some games, and I'll see you guys either here on YouTube next week. I mean, who knows, I might make a pre-made video, but at the very least, we'll have a YouTube stream next week. And if you follow me on Twitter, I'll see you there soon. Have a great one, guys. All right, love you guys. You guys are the best. Love you, love you, love you. Bye, 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 bye.